Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another installment in the Sydney Railroad build. If you're watching last week, you'll have seen me build a reversing loop on the newly completed peninsula framing. This week I will start on building the Helix. Actually, the first clip on this video should probably have been grouped with last week's video, but I didn't find it in time, so you got it this week instead. So anyway, without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and get started. Well, I have been out here pretty much all day, and I haven't even started what I plan to do today. Initially, I wanted to get the bottom lap of the Helix sorted out, or at least plotted accurately. But I thought it'd be nice to have the dispatcher's desk in first, because that would be a convenient shelf to put the tools while I'm working on the Helix. And I thought with the trial and error nature of that, and of course waving large chunks of plywood around newly completed track, I didn't want to risk damaging it, so I decided to get the fences in first. Now this end I could have done, but it was all short pieces. I wanted to get the far end done first, cut all the long pieces first, and then use all the offcuts for this end. Now you may notice that some of this end has 4-inch high walls on the outside. That is because I wanted to provide a retaining wall to hold the scenery back, because this area and the other side of the reversing loop, there's two places where there's not going to be a lot of room for the scenery outside of it. So I wanted to make sure I didn't encroach on the track and result in insufficient clearances. But then I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to get the soldering iron in at the correct angle by these high fences, so I decided to do all the feeders first. And of course, if I'm doing feeders, I may as well do the bus wires as well. So I started by wiring up the reversing loop, and then I did all the fencing. So half a day for wiring, half a day for the fences, and that's about all I got time for today. It's actually been a short day, and although I didn't do what I planned to do today, it was still a productive day. Everything I did still had to be done. Zeus likes it when I do wiring. Don't you, Zeus? He likes it because I have to do it from the creeper, and as soon as I get down there, he thinks I've got down to play with him. So he jumps on top of me. It's kind of difficult to work with an 80-pound pit bull on my chest, but I manage. Most of the time he just finds a quiet corner and goes to sleep, either in his bed or on one of the mats I've got here, or on a pile of sawdust. It's kind of soothing listening to him gently snoring away as I work. I just thought I'd share that with you. My first task this morning is to cut out the plywood for the dispatcher's desk. This is where it goes. I started by making a paper template. This 4-inch fold on the front allows for it to overhang the beam by 4 inches. I'm not sure if that's the number I want yet, but it just reminds me that I'm not cutting it flush at the front. I've actually got to decide how big I want to make it. I've got plenty of space, so I might even go more than those 4 inches. Anyway, it has to be cut off at this end because of the approaches to the reversing loop, but this end it will just continue around the curve of the inner helix. So once I have decided how much overhang I want at the front, I can just make the adjustment on the plywood and then cut it out, and hopefully I should get it to fit first time. With the paper pattern traced out on the 3/4 inch plywood, all I've got to do is cut it out, and with any luck it should fit first time. Note that I have traced it with the plywood upside down, because the jigsaw does tend to splinter on the top side. So at least that way, if there is any splintering, it will be underneath. Let me just cut that out quickly, and I will be right back. There is the dispatcher's desk temporarily positioned. I'm going to put the front edging on before I screw it in place, because I think it'll be a lot easier to do it that way. It'll certainly be easier to get the clamps in, and it also means that I can run it long and trim it off. So let me do that, and I will be right back. The dispatcher's desk is now finished and permanently installed. I screwed it up from the bottom, the same way as I did the workbench. I've also filled the edge between the plywood and the front trim with wood putty and sanded it smooth with 120 grit sandpaper, and I gave the same treatment to the edging around the workbench. So that's all finished, and it gives a nice neat edge. I'm now ready to start plotting the base of the Helix. Where the front track enters, I want it to be 34 inches off the ground. I've discussed it with the client, and we've decided to abandon the raised entry point for the rear track. Originally it was going to enter the second lap of the Helix instead of the first. I'd skip the first lap altogether. But it would only have been 11 inches lower than the fascia for the upper deck. So that rear track would not have been particularly visible through the scene. So we decided that instead of continuing to climb from the terraced area, it's going to drop back down to the same level and then climb again. It does mean that uphill trains will spend longer in the Helix than they would have done, but that's a small price to pay for being able to see them better in the visible portion of the railroad. So I'm going to go away and get plotting the entry points to the Helix, and I'll be right back. I have just positioned a piece of curved roadbed, sub-roadbed rather, for the grade leading into the inner lap of the Helix. That's the downhill track. I put the level across it. I did have the torpedo level on top of that just to make sure the grade was right. It's about 1.8% and gives me the required 4 inches of clearance over the reversing loop. So that was just the final check just to make sure that everything works. I'm going to put one more riser in here under this piece of sub-roadbed. And then I need to start working on framing to get the first lap of the Helix in the right place. The first couple of pieces are going to be quite difficult. After that, it'll go a lot quicker. It's just the nature of a Helix that the first lap is always what takes the longest. Well, that is all the sub-roadbed for the first lap of the Helix finished, along with the two entry grades. This one is rising out of the Helix, this one is falling, so that by the time we get around to here, the one will be 5 inches higher than the other one. And then that will be the start of the terraced main lines around the end curve. I think that's a pretty good day's work. Tomorrow I will see about getting foam roadbed and track on it. So don't go away, I will see you then. Well, as soon as I went in last night, I realized that I had forgotten to put the 1/8 inch step that I need in the sub-roadbed at this point to allow for going from the thin foam to the thick foam. So that's my first task for this morning, to install those steps. I've already started on this one. It's very simple. I just undid that. I started by cutting it across there, undid those two screws to take that out, and then I've put a splice plate underneath it with a piece of 1/8 inch masonite in that one end. Only took a few minutes, and now all I've got to do is lower these three risers by the same amount, by 1/8 of an inch, and that'll be done. This one will be a slightly different procedure because the bearer plate is on the part that's going to be lowered instead of the other part. So here it's even easier. I start by lowering the risers, and then I just undo those two screws and insert the spacer in the middle. Well, I've already finished lowering the front grade. I'm about halfway through the back one. I wanted to make another clip, show you the easiest way of doing it. I've already got the spacer in, although I haven't trimmed it off yet. To lower the risers, I start by using the appropriate spacer to draw a line above the joist, making sure it's a sharp pencil so the line's in the right place. Remove 3 of the 4 screws holding the riser, then put a clamp on before removing the 4th one. And then once that's done, it's a simple matter to just tap it down with a hammer. And that should be about right. I will check it with the level, but I'm fairly confident that's going to be as near as makes no difference in the right place. And then all I've got to do is put the screws back in again. Well, I have been out here less than half an hour, and both of those grade adjustments are finished. So as I said, it didn't take very long. Now I can get on with what I plan to do today. I'm going to start by putting in foam roadbed on the first lap of the Helix and start laying track. So don't go away, I will be right back. Well, I have the first half lap positioned approximately where it goes. I started by building a subframe that just goes across there, resting on the two beams. Remember I showed you the cantilever beams? It just rests on those. And I will shim the sub roadbed up on top of that. And then I got some radial joists at the joints in these two places. The risers are just clamped because I haven't got them exactly the right height yet. I'm just guessing. And then I'll put two more risers in the middle. But what I've got to do is get that far corner where the level is positioned accurately and work up the grade from there. The piece of curved sub roadbed that is clamped here is the inside track that cuts the corner. Rather than going round the oval, it just continues the curve and cuts across underneath the Helix. That way I get at least an extra foot of visible main line at this point. Anyway, now that I have enough of the supporting structure available, it's time to get those first few pieces positioned accurately. Let me go away, do that, and I will be right back. Well, it was proving a little difficult at first to get the bottom of the Helix positioned accurately. So what I did was rejoin the 6 sections together, but on top of the entry point. Some of the splice plates are the original ones from when I assembled it the first time, and some of them are new. But that enabled me to put it in place and be sure that I wasn't distorting it in any way. So this side of the Helix is now accurately graded. I will have to undo one of these splice plates before I can raise this end to the right grade, because it just wants to start going down again. But the complete lap, I believe, has now done its job. It should be a lot easier from now on. I almost messed up. I was just starting to put this together, and then I realized that I can't attach the Helix to that subframe. Well, I can, but only with screws, because it has to come apart. The Helix will be too big to get down the stairwell, so it has to come apart. That splice plate will be undone, as will the one on the other side and all those above them. So it'll be 2 semicircular pieces, and the frame that joins them has to be separated from both, for getting it into the client's basement. So where I've got these pairs of blocks, the top one is glued to the underside of the Helix, and the other one is attached to the subframe. And then once the glue is set, I will take the clamps off and put screws in from the bottom. And that will hold it in place while still being detachable for transportation. That's about all I got time for today, so I'm going to go in now and come back out tomorrow. I'll see you then. Well, so far this morning, I have finished the area along here. The clamps are now gone. It's permanently screwed from underneath in such a way that it can come off for transportation. I've got that support in there. I've got this one, that one, and that one. 5 more risers. So now the first half a lap is permanently located. Before I can continue, I've now got to undo the splice plates on the other half so I can lift it up, because now it just wants to go down again. So let me do that, and I will be right back. Well, I am most of the way around the first lap. I'm going to put the next piece of sub roadbed in, get 3 more risers in, and hopefully, if I have guessed the 1.8% correctly, I will be 4 5/8 inches higher than the entry point. Anyway, these 3 risers that you see now and the beam below it is all temporary. Ultimately, this will get a joist above the first level. So there'll be a joist where that one is now, resting on a post at each end. And that will do double duty. Not only will it support the 2 ends of both Helix portions, but it will also be the spacer for the next level above. And the reason for doing that is to maximize the duct under clearance for the dispatcher to get into his office. there'll be about 38 inches, which I think is pretty reasonable. Anyway, I'm going to get back to work now, finish this first slab, and I will be right back. Well, that is the first lap completed. I just put a tape on the step at the end, and it is exactly 4 5/8 as I was aiming for. This riser here will have to be redone because at the moment it looks like the roadbed for the lower level is going to go right through it. So I've either got to adjust this roadbed and go around it, or make it 2 thin posts, one each side. Anyway, I'll do that after lunch. Don't go away. I will see you then. For this project, I have nice, smooth, straight edges on the inside of my Helix sub-roadbed, so that makes marking out really easy. I just built this device, and I have 4 notches along the side for the inner and outer edges of both strips of roadbed. My first thought was to use a curved piece across the inside. And I just started doing that, and I thought, no, I can improve it. By using a straight piece, it automatically gets the easements on along the straight. Notice how we've got a 1/4 inch gap there, and as I get to the straight, that closes down to nothing, giving me the required offset. And that will make a perfect easement every time. So I'm just going to whiz around quickly, get this lap done, and then I will keep that tool safe for the rest of the Helix. Well, that's all for this week. Hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful or interesting or both. And I hope to see you back next time, where I will continue working on the Helix and get it raised up, maybe even all the way to the top. And I hope to see you back here for that. So until then, thanks for watching, and bye for now.